After 3 hours under oath, Congress just accused Homeland Security of lying, ignoring the Constitution, and defying the Supreme Court. This is serious.
Gentleman yields. I think we've covered everyone. Mr. Ranking Member, you're recognized for a closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Garcia's statement. I can't believe that we would send somebody or anyone from our country somewhere else and say, well, we cut off all communication. We're a better country than that. I just thank Mr. Garcia for raising that question. Secretary Nome, at the start of this hearing, you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Then you sat down and dodged the truth over and over and over for a little more than 3 hours, so help you God. You repeatedly testified that you and the Department of Homeland Security will follow the Constitution, the laws, and the order of the Supreme Court. Well, the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yet, a federal court found that the Department of Homeland Security, under your watch, believes that it has a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. So you did not tell the truth to this committee today when you said you would follow the Constitution and comply with due process. You also testified that you follow orders of the Supreme Court of the United States and all courts. But the Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States. But you just testified before this committee that Kilmar Garcia will never return to the United States. So you didn't tell the truth to this committee again when you said that you comply with court orders and decisions. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produced no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States. In fact, everyone involved in those cases say that the mothers, in fact, did not want their children, especially their sick American children, deported. In fact, your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with an attorney or children's father, and deported them before a court had time to even hear the case. You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse to comply with court orders that try to stop you. That puts all of us at risk. Beyond your false testimony about the administration's deportation policies, you falsely stated that the administration is focused on a full range of DHS missions. Instead, your budget request appears to reflect a view that DHS's sole purpose is to be a border wall construction agency that deports U.S. citizen children with cancer. Your budget proposed cuts to cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security. Even before asking Congress for these budget cuts, you've overseen mass reductions in the workforce at CISA and FEMA. Despite repeated requests from this committee on how many people have been fired or have been bullied into quitting before their tenure, DHS has refused to share that information. So it should worry every American that we do not know how many people are left at FEMA to respond to disasters and how many cyber defenders still work at CISA as China and other adversaries attack our systems every day. And you've made clear in response to my questioning, you have no written plan for FEMA. It is very apparent that also is no plan for CISA, where you are trying to gut the agency's funding and falsely claiming that CISA is a censorship agency. since CISA never censored anyone. But now we are all paying the price for you buying into a baseless conspiracy theory. Secretary Nome, I'm glad that you finally came to testify before this committee. But I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth so this committee can do its work, helping to defend DHS from the attacks you've launched against it. Mr. Chair.
This wasn't just a closing statement, it was an outright indictment of leadership at the Department of Homeland Security. A senior lawmaker stood up and accused the administration of doing something that should alarm every American, ignoring the United States Constitution. Let's break it down. The Fifth Amendment is clear. No person should be deprived of liberty without due process. Not some people, not only citizens, no person. But according to these allegations, individuals, including families, were deported without proper legal process, without access to attorneys, and in some cases, before courts could even intervene. And it gets deeper. The Department of Homeland Security is also being accused of defying a direct order from the Supreme Court of the United States, specifically regarding the return of an individual to the U.S. If true, that raises a massive constitutional question. What happens when the executive branch simply ignores the courts? Because that's not just a policy disagreement, that's a potential breakdown of checks and balances. And then there's the bigger picture. While all of this is happening, disaster response agencies like Federal Emergency Management Agency are reportedly being weakened. Cybersecurity defenses under Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency are facing cuts. And key data about staffing and readiness is being withheld. So ask yourself, at a time when threats, both natural and digital, are rising, why would the systems designed to protect Americans be scaled back? This isn't about politics anymore. It's about whether truth matters in government testimony, whether court orders still mean something, and whether the Constitution is still being followed in practice, not just in words. If you want real, unfiltered breakdowns of what's happening inside government, subscribe now, because this conversation is far from over.